So thank you so much, Maxim, for coming on our podcast. This podcast is called the 2040 Banker, and the idea is we want to talk about that how banking would evolve by 2040 in the next 1 decade. What all changes would we actually see? Typically, in this podcast, we only invite bankers, but it's an interesting episode because currently you are working with Google, so you head financial services. You're part of the financial services team at Google Cloud. But we really want to understand why do we have a person from Google and technology company in this podcast today. So what would help is if you can help us with your career progression, how you started your journey, what all roles you have played in the past, and currently what do you handle exactly at Google?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me and for the opportunity to share some of the insights which I am seeing across the industry. In my role at Google Cloud, I am responsible for financial services industry in Asia Pacific and Japan, Australia, New Zealand, India, Southeast Asia, Greater China, Korea, Japan. So this is all my remit. But I'm also part of the global team. So I have my PhD in EMEA, Toby in Americas. So I'm able to see not only what happens in this part of the world, but overall globally. And there is a lot what we are able to see. How the banking industry is transforming, how the digital technology, AI, Gen AI, actually changing the way how the banks operate and how they will operate in 20 years.
Yeah.
And when it comes to where my team is sitting in the organization, we're sitting between the product and the front line.
Okay.
And literally in my role, I'm being as SME, subject matter expert in the financial services industry, engaged with all the leaders on the business side across the banks, insurers, payment providers, etc., to understand what are the drivers, what are the priorities which are happening in the industry, and same I'm hearing from the not only from the banks, insurers themselves, but also from the partners,
Yeah.
from the regulators, sharing this knowledge, playing back what is the trends which I'm hearing about, and then transferring this message in alignment with what Georgina is seeing in EMEA, Toby in Americas, to the product team on what are the products and solutions to solve the business problems need to be delivered by the Google Cloud.
Yeah.
And respectively for the front line, what are the priority topics which are on the agenda for the banks when they need to focus when engaged with the clients to bring the most of the value. So this is what I'm doing in a Google Cloud.
Great.
Now to your first part of the question, how did I end up in this role?
Yeah.
Actually, I joined Google Cloud 3 years ago.
Okay.
Before that, I was with Standard Chartered Bank, and I was responsible for data and AI at the bank globally, across about 50 markets where the bank operate. And before moving to Singapore for Standard Chartered, I was based in Europe.
Okay.
I was with a company called McKinsey, where I was what is called advanced analytics translator, literally working with the banks, insurers to understand what is the business problems and how the technology, AI in particular, can help to solve those business problems.
Yeah.
And before McKinsey, I have been in banking, insurance, asset management for 20 plus years on the business side. And this is why I have a bit of the ability to understand what are the problems which the banks and insurers are breathing day in and out,
Understood.
and how the technology can help them, given my original background in technology.
Understood. And how much time did you spend at Stanchart?
About 2 years.
2 years. Okay. So eventually, it's not entirely true that you are not a banker. So you are an ex-banker converting into a technology role now.
And before Standard Chartered, it was consulting.
Okay.
And before consulting, it was again banking. So I was, for example, in RBS,
Yeah.
focusing on derivatives tradings in the bank.
Understood. So why did you pick Google? How did you decide that your next shift is going to be from banking to a technology company like Google Cloud?
First, technology is really changing how the financial services operates today and will
Yeah.
operate today. And therefore, ability to bring the knowledge from the technology, which I originally got with my first degree in AI, with working in this space for a few years, then moving to the banking, being there on the business side, being able to merge them together, and so what are the business problems and how technology can help. This is what makes it appealing to me.
Yeah.
That's why moving to technology was to help the banks to adopt the best solutions to solve the business problems. It was quite natural. And it happened that Google is uniquely positioned among the large technology players in this space.
Sure.
Let me explain a little more. So we have several cloud providers on the market. Some of them are focusing on the technology only.
Yeah.
They speak only with IT, and like when I was at Standard Chartered, some of such cloud providers, they have never spoken with business stakeholders like myself. It was purely IT discussions. As a consequence, and I was actually just yesterday in Hyderabad, and one of my co-panelists from JP Morgan, she was sharing how she, as a business stakeholder, is frustrated with such cloud providers.
Okay.
Because it's purely technology offering
Yeah.
with little connect to the business problems.
Correct.
Not a great approach. There are other cloud providers who focus on only some specific workloads, maybe big workloads, and on the productivity side, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 70-80% of the offering. Okay, it's much better than the first group of the providers.
Yeah.
But Google is very different. Its priority is to be the cloud for innovation, the cloud to solve the business problems, leveraging data and AI for the transformation.
Okay.
And unlike the first or the second category of the big tech companies, Google is focusing a lot, maybe primarily, on the discussions with the business stakeholders to understand what are their business problems in banking particularly, in insurance particularly, across all different pillars which each of those sub-verticals operate. And then how technology plus the whole Alphabet Group ecosystem can help in a completely new way to solve those business problems.
Understood.
And then obviously bring IT on board to support in this journey.
Makes sense.
And this is the reason why I decided to go exactly to the Google Cloud, because this is the right approach.
Yeah.
The strategy resonates with the way how I see the technology companies should help the business, the banks in particular, to transform, not just sell whatever infrastructure you have, but to help to solve the business problems. And this is where Google Cloud is uniquely positions itself.
Understood. So on a similar topic, so since we're talking a lot around cloud adoption and all, but overall what I have seen, and I would want to take your perspective on this as well, everything in banking in the last 20-30 years has always been like batches. So we used to process, and banks are used to process everything in batches. But what has been happening in the last, especially last 1 decade, last 10 years, what we have seen, everything is moving towards real time, whether it is payments, your loans, any kind of customer interaction, cross-sell and all. One, what is your observation on this? Second, how you, as let's say Google Cloud representative, how are you planning for this? And lastly, from the perspective of a bank, how should a bank plan for such an architecture which is completely real time, and how differently does it look from a batch-based system at an architecture level?
Thanks. It's a really great question. And some people say that if you are not able to process payments, loans, and all other interactions with the clients as a bank in real time, you are not relevant. Not tomorrow. You are not relevant today.
Okay.
Let me share my personal example.
Yeah.
I was buying a ticket here for one of the airlines.
Yeah.
I didn't receive a confirmation in real time. So I just immediately went to another payment options to pay for my ticket.
Yeah.
So I wasn't waiting to get like this confirmation in 1 hour. So I want things to happen in real time because the world is so fast changing.
Correct.
So I cannot wait even 15 minutes
Correct.
to get this my payment processed.
Yeah.
Same with the loans. When someone is applying for the loans, if normally this client would be applying to several financial institutions for the loan, and if one of them is not able to reply in real time, it may be too late, even
Yeah.
if though your interest rate might be the best, because I already made the decision. Today, world is moving at such an accelerated speed. It's like Formula One, it's only increasing,
Yeah.
that the clients, they don't have time to wait, because there are so many things happening all the time that I cannot remember that this morning I applied for something, so I needed to have been completed today.
Correct.
So advice, I will choose another provider, another
Yeah.
bank.
Yeah.
That's why I agree with the statement that if you as a bank is not able to provide real-time experience, payment, lending, uh, interactions in real time, even waiting on the call, you are not relevant.
Makes sense. Now, this you talked largely from the perspective of a, let's say, a bank business person or somebody
Yes.
who's leading the business or the CEO of the bank. If I make you wear the hat of a bank CIO, or a bank CTO, how would this architecture actually look like? What does it mean to actually have a real-time digital architecture from a technology perspective? How is it different from what we have been doing so far?
There are three things about this. The first one is it implies transformation. So it implies the digital transformation. So if you are the bank sitting on 30, 40-year-old mainframes, which were not designed for the real-time processing, then you as the CIO, you should accept that you need to do something. You cannot keep the glass cover
Yeah.
over that mainframe with the hope that it will not fall down before your retirement.
Yeah.
Because it's today, you are not going to be relevant already.
Yeah.
So the first one is the need for the immediate transformation,
Sure.
and CIO to
Yeah.
become appreciating this. The second, so to change the technology, the one which can adopt in real time. The second thing is when it comes to the real-time payments, for example, or real-time loans, then there is very few nuances which come up when you move to the real time. And ability to scale instantly or scale down becomes very important. So think about it. There is a cricket match happening in India, and the volume of payments can go up 10 times from what is normal.
Yeah.
And the people would not appreciate that on that specific day, just simply because everyone is doing the payments, you are not doing real-time payments anymore. So you need to be able to adopt nuances which are coming with need to scale up and scale down very quickly.
Yeah.
Most likely, you will not be able to get it on-prem. And that's where the cloud infrastructure, ability to tap in the massive resources, becomes very important.
Yeah.
And the third item is coming from the regulation, from ability to analyze all those flows for money laundering, for fraud, for risk management in
Yeah.
real time.
Yeah.
You cannot have a mistake
Yeah.
to happen, and then someone, because it happens only like within T+2 settlement, someone will probably catch it up, or like someone will handle it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore because it's real time. So you need to embrace different AI systems which will help you in real time to monitor, understand all those payments, lendings, different experiences and react on them quickly, because for a human it's not possible. That's
Yeah.
why you need to embrace AI. Therefore, three things. The first one is a digital transformation. You need to get out of your legacy technologies. You need to rethink how the business operates.
Yeah.
Number one. Second is ability to scale to spikes and changes in demand instantaneously. And number three is to adopt AI in order to build the whole ecosystem around those real-time interactions.
Makes sense. I think very well summarized about what a CIO typically needs to look at. But if a bank is, let's say, still skeptical, then are we still in that real time world or no? Do you have some data that you have observed across the banks or while working with the banks, which prove the point that real time transactions have grown really at a rapid pace in the last 1 decade? Anything you would want to talk about that particular aspect?
Of course. Actually, we're in India at the moment.
Yeah.
And the first time that I had the privilege to be in India, it was 2007. I was a student at that time.
Yeah.
And I went through whole the country, Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, Mumbai, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, enjoying this amazing country. But in 2007, it was cash everywhere.
All cash, yes.
It was all cash.
Yeah.
Look what it is today.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, digital payments.
Yeah.
We went for lunch just a few hours ago.
Yeah.
Did you use cash?
No, UPI.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And this is everywhere.
Yeah.
So this is just a testimonial to what a massive transformation is happening.
Yeah.
It's not exponential. It's exponential in exponential
Yeah.
change which is happening through the country.
Yeah.
And believe me, the same thing happens all across the world at the moment, especially in emerging economies like India, Indonesia, Thailand, China, everywhere.
Yeah.
People are embracing the real-time digital payments everywhere. In many countries, the cash is gone completely already. And
Yeah.
I think that many countries where you still officially have the cash, they're on the path to not have cash in a few years.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about rest of the countries as well. But so far, what we have discussed is real time is the thing that we see a lot in the financial world right now, and everybody, all the banks are thinking about it, and cloud is playing a very critical role around it. And if we just look at cloud as an overall concept or as a technology stack, if I say, just 5 years ago, there was still skepticism between banks that whether we should move to a cloud-like technology. And from a compliance perspective, they had skepticism on it. They could not get regulatory or internal approvals, or just there was resistance. Where do you think we are at the moment in terms of cloud adoption by the banks? Do you still see, are there still banks who are talking about not going to cloud at all? Or have we just crossed that hurdle now?
I very rarely find the banks this day who say that they will not go to the cloud. We have a number of the banks,
Yeah.
and not only the banks and BFCs as well, like insurers, etc., who already migrated 70, 80, even 100% on the cloud. There are some who maybe a bit, for various reasons, a bit more conservative. But none of them is saying we are not going to go to the cloud. They are saying we just need a bit more time to prepare. And we do see that every single financial institution is doing the steps to go to the cloud. So it's became a reality today that many vendors, they are not supporting the on-prem installations anymore.
Yeah.
So you cannot get the latest technologies unless you're on the cloud. So that's number one. The second thing, what there is one thing which really changed over these 5 years, is the reason why the banks go to the cloud. When I was in McKinsey, so I had to engage a lot with the what we call legacy cloud providers at that time, and then same when I was at Standard Chartered. And the reason why the banks were exploring cloud at that time, it was just to lift and shift like 30-year-old systems to save on some infrastructure costs.
Yeah.
This value proposition is becoming less and less shiny these days. Because, okay, maybe you've saved on some infrastructure costs, but that's not the only problem which you're having today. It's not about the cost. It's about relevant for today's business.
Mm-hmm.
And this the reason why today the banks are moving to the cloud is actually not to save on infrastructure costs,
Okay.
but actually to transform the way how they operate,
Mm-hmm.
to solve their business problems, maybe to bring something unique which you would not be able to get if you are on-prem or on what we call cloud for infrastructure.
Yeah.
So it's not anymore about the technology play only.
Yeah.
It is about leveraging, for instance, the whole Alphabet Group ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
in order to prevent phishing scam.
Yeah.
We have a solution Web3 for that.
Yeah.
Or to prevent money laundering or to mitigate money laundering.
Yeah.
Or to better understand your customers. Because we as an Alphabet Group, we obviously see so many insights about what are the people's thoughts, trends in terms of the search, etc. So it becomes like so powerful to be more relevant for the clients.
Yeah.
So this is the reasons why the banks today are moving to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And to testify to this statement, let's have a look what is happening in the cloud market landscape.
Mm-hmm.
If you see the clouds who are focusing on the cloud for infrastructure, they are losing market share very rapidly.
Okay.
And the clouds who are focusing on what we call cloud for value to solve the business problems, they're the fastest growing ones.
Okay.
I can proudly say that Google is growing 30+%
Very
year on
nice.
year, and the
Yeah.
fastest growing cloud. And the reason behind it, because our sharp focus in on solving the business problems. And this is where the whole industry has changed, why you go on the cloud.
Makes sense. So, let's say as a CIO, I'm now convinced that I want to move a lot of my workload towards cloud, or as a bank CIO, I'm just starting my journey. What are some of the integration challenges that I can actually expect? What are some of the migration challenges that I can expect? And how can I better prepare for it upfront?
Indeed. One thing is for the business stakeholders to appreciate the use case and capabilities which come with the cloud.
Yeah.
And it is on your shoulders as a chief information officer or chief technology officer is actually to make sure that all the architecture is aligned and all the tech stack is ready for that. One of the approaches which we find efficient is when you don't eat elephant as a whole, but you split elephant in pieces.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And then so different components of your architecture, and you're looking at them moving step by step into the cloud or transforming then as you move into the cloud. And this is where APIs and the great stuff which you as a Refo are doing become extremely helpful.
Yeah.
To drive. It's not about the migration. It's about the transformation of the technology to solve the business problems. So you're leveraging all the APIs, all the open ecosystem in order to facilitate this journey to be more resilient, faster, and cost efficient.
Yeah. And what about compliance and scalability? I think you touched upon these aspects a bit. So as a bank CIO, if a person is moving their payloads or they're gradually moving towards cloud, how can a cloud actually help me in my compliance related needs? And let's talk only about banks. That from a bank perspective, how can, let's say, Google Cloud or any other cloud can actually help them on cloud, the compliance part? And let's also talk about the scalability aspect there
Okay.
for banks.
There are three things when it comes to the compliance. The first one is I cannot speak about the other cloud providers. I can speak about
Sure.
my company.
Yeah.
We have a dedicated team which is called the Trust team,
Okay.
and they're working with the banks in order to make sure that the banks are educated and move to the cloud in compliance with all the regulations.
Okay.
So these are the people who understand the regulations in every single country. What are the critical systems? What are non-critical systems? What are the data privacy regulations? What data has to be stored in the country? What data can be processed outside of country, etc., etc. For every single market here, and they're able and to advise on these nuances to the banks, and also to share what are the best practices
Yeah.
to achieve this. Obviously, in order to scale, we also rely on some of the partners who come and work together with this team to help to build this cloud governance, guardrails, etc.
Yeah.
This is number one. So, at least speaking from Google Cloud,
Yeah.
we do have the whole support for the banks on that. Second thing is the regulators. I'm personally involved, engaged with almost every regulator in
Okay.
this part of the world. Ranging being part of the project Mindforge with Monetary Authority of Singapore on how the AI governance for the banks should look like in the country. Hosting the regulators from all other countries to share what are the best practices which exist in other markets in terms of the regulation, which will help their banks to prosper and become more resilient, which is also the incentives for the regulators.
Yeah.
And we do see that this education, this work with the regulators really help to change the whole markets. The most recent one is the changes which happened in Korean regulations last year. Before last year, so there was a requirement about the physical separation, which
Okay.
really was a big blocker for the Korean financial institutions to adopt the new technologies. In August last year, the Korean regulators, by observing the adoption of the technology in the consultation with all the right stakeholders, they realized that this is a blocker. And the regulator doesn't want, because of some legacy regulation, its banks to fall behind the rest of the banks across the world.
Yeah.
Therefore, regulator did the right thing at that time, last year, and changed the regulation from the physical separation to the logical separation. And this
Got it.
really opened up an opportunity for the Korean banks, and also insurers, etc.,
Yeah.
to start adopting the new technologies. And it's
Understood.
not only Korea; it's like across all the countries, all the markets here. We are working very closely with the regulators on sharing with them what are the best practices, what are the best technologies which are coming on the market, so that they can adjust the regulations in such a way that in a compliant manner which makes sense, the banks can appreciate and embrace the best technologies. So this is number two.
Yeah.
And number three is obviously with a cloud provider, we not only comply with all the regulations and all the expectations, but sometimes we actually put additional standards, even higher level that maybe you would imagine in the industry, just by setting these new bars and the standards ourselves.
Yeah.
Obviously, number three is also
No, I, so
very
I,
hard.
I totally align with you on the first point when you mentioned that out of the box, cloud would provide you a lot of tools to actually comply with the regulation. And I've seen that because a lot of times when we explore security related tools, if I just talk about the security part here, then even if you just put a lot of those security controls in place or security tools in place from the cloud directly, you start complying to a lot of, let's say, ISO 27001 or SOC 2 compliance automatically. So a lot of that, and instead of just going for those certifications and compliances, what we did, we just started exploring first what Google Cloud offers as security tools. Because if they have created it, maybe this is something which is the need, or that is a common ask from the industry overall.
Exactly.
So from a small companies, I think it's also a lot of help. I think large banks, maybe they can put a lot of resources in terms of just understanding that. But from a small bank or small fintech perspective, they can just go to the cloud and start understanding what all security tools are there, just to be protected on
Exactly.
that.
Why do you need to invent a bicycle
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
it is already exists there,
Yeah,
and you can use the best practices for
totally.
compliance for security on the cloud?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have been engaging with a lot of regulators in the JAPAC region, and you talked about some of the common discussions that are happening and some of the changes that have happened in the Korean market around that logical separation versus the physical one. But is there any one common concern that you hear from these regulators across the geographies? Is there any one common concern that you hear?
Let me tell you the story.
Sure.
Uh, Last year, at one of the conferences in Singapore, one of the regulators was sharing about great AI technologies, etc.
Yeah.
And there was a question from the audience. Hey, uh, you are like one of the most advanced regulators, like very progressive and really. But how come so many banks in your market haven't yet embraced the best modern technologies?
Mm-hmm.
And the regulator at the time, at that meeting, he asked, okay, uh, there were banks in the audience, and he asks, let's ask them the question.
Okay.
But coming back to your question,
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the trends which I'm seeing is every regulator wants to build an ecosystem, or every major reputable regulator wants to build an ecosystem, guardrails, handbooks, which will help the banks
Mm-hmm.
to faster adopt the new technologies, not to prevent them from adopting those new technologies,
Okay.
but to become more successful in adopting them. And every regulator, in my personal opinion, want to be in a situation when it can reply to that question. Actually, because of my regulations, because I am so active and progressing in this,
Mm.
my banks, the one which I am governing,
Yeah.
they're actually ahead of all the other markets in
Mm.
adopting successfully and efficiently the new technologies.
Very nice. So I never thought that this could be your answer. So I thought maybe it's more around fraud mitigation and all, which could be a common theme. But everybody, all regulators thinking about being more progressive. And I think India has been a great example around
RBI
it.
is amazing.
A lot of good initiatives have been taken by RBI on that. And now what we see in US also, examples like Fed now in
Yes.
US or regulations by CFPB on 1033 are another examples in US also, which are very progressive in terms of moving banks forward on the technology. So yeah, I think great point, Maxim, on this. Uh, so talking about maybe some of the bank problems, uh, and again on the tech side of it, what are some of the really hard tech problems that you have encountered in the banking world that even exist today? So things like maybe large data migration being one of the key problem areas for them. Have you seen a common theme around that as well, and how you have been helping some of the banks around that particular area?
There are pretty much every bank is doing the big projects and the big transformation. And probably every big project has its own complexities, nuances. Uh, but one thing which probably comes as number one most difficult thing for whatever reason to solve for those big projects, or like the biggest miss which comes for those projects is when the technology starts those projects without having business on board.
Okay.
From my personal experience, almost every project where business was not on board became a disaster.
Yeah.
The positive things that over years the situation changes, and that's why we are seeing this move from the cloud for infrastructure for the cloud for value
Yeah.
becoming a big thing today as a testimonial to this. But for whatever big project I have seen, the main learning is that you need to have the business stakeholders on board from the very beginning. And the best thing is is the fact when these big projects are coming from the business stakeholders. So it doesn't become about just purely data migration, lift and shift from legacy data lake to more modern data warehouse, for example, data lake solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about moving from some data from your legacy mainframe with some application written on Habol and how to lift and shift just to run on some more new systems.
Yeah.
But it's about transforming that project definition into driving the whole business level transformation. Because the fact that when this mainframe was introduced to the bank 50 years ago, the banking industry was different.
Yeah.
And it was designed probably for the way how business operates 50 years ago.
Correct.
So if you do the data migration for that, let's say, mainframe or in whatever databases it uses to the more modern lift and shift, actually you don't make your business comfortable to operate in today's environment, because it's very different than it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
You need to embrace this as an opportunity to not to lift and shift the data, but literally to transform how the data being handled, starting from as simple things as how to do the data lineage monitoring, how to handle the metadata, how to embrace different AI systems on top of those data, so that they will help you to ensure that people can find those data whenever they need it in a compliance with their access requirements.
Yeah.
So probably in every single project, and I will be picky on because you mentioned data migration, the most important thing is not about lift and shift from what was done 50 years ago just to change the tech stack. It's about appreciating that the business today is not what it was 50 years ago. And when you do this change, you need to look at it as a transformation with a business angle in it.
Yeah. Understood. See, on the similar lines, another question I have as a follow up on this. So we talked about mainframes as the core, but now we also have a lot of non-mainframe cores in the market,
Yes.
which do provide some level of API connectivity as well. But today, even today, when we talk to a lot of bank CIOs and all, they're still struggling in terms of building some level of experience layer in front of those existing cores, whether mainframe or non-mainframe. But what could be a good way for the CIOs to move forward on this? So there are two options, and you tell me. I think what do you think? What you have been seeing in the industry? One option is I keep putting systems in front of those existing cores as a top up, right? But a lot of these cores are actually designed, like you rightly said, back for branch based banking,
Yes.
which may not be ready today for an embedded based banking kind of a scenario completely, or a more real time stuff.
Okay.
So eventually they may have to plan for something like a replacement of that core with a more digital core completely. But we know, I think, what are the several constraints with respect to data migration or with the speed with which the bank as an organization moves. What
Yes.
could be a good strategy for a CIO if they want to modernize their core, make it uh, more ready for the current banking needs? What should my strategy be, and what are the trends that you are seeing in the industry today?
Okay. So when approaching this problem, I would problem statement. I will look into this in terms of what can be done quickly,
Yeah.
as well as what can be done as a roadmap over some period of time. So in terms of what can be done quickly is when on top of your core banking, and I understand that exactly to your point, mainframes maybe not that widespread in India, but it is very widespread for the core in other markets. Uh, but in India, you have other legacy
Yeah.
non-mainframe
Yeah.
core applications. So what you as a CIO, or you're able in a short-term solution, you're able to put like middleware components, which will kind of will help you to create all those connectors with various systems, and kind of you can then embrace all the embedded banking and all these things instead of building layers by layers by layers.
Yeah.
Just put a solution which is designed for that, and it will help you at least to start providing some sort of a modern customer experience to your end client.
Yeah.
So this is on the short term, but it's just to fix the problem immediately, kind of to repair. But the need for the core banking migration still exists,
Okay.
because if it is 30-year-old, 50-year-old core banking solution, it's still will not be able to handle a lot of today's requirements. Yeah,
Understood.
like real-time payment, etc., etc. So what then you do, and we see this is what is many of the uh, okay, there are several approaches how you do it in the long term. So one which is seems to be quite widespread on the market is when besides your main business, you also start a digital bank, and then you are hoping that over time you will be able to move your clients from your legacy bank to the digital bank.
Yeah.
And so there are several banks across this part of the world who are experimenting with this journey.
Yeah.
The second approach, which I'm seeing, is when you take your legacy core and you are trying to slice it in different pieces, and then you start moving them piece by piece to the more modern solutions.
Mm.
So this is another approach which I have seen on the market. Very rarely, but still, there are some brave souls do exist on the market who take a rip and replace approach.
Yeah.
So when they're saying, okay, we'll use solutions such as Google's dual run, where we are trying to migrate the whole core from the legacy one to the more modern one. So these are the three most common approaches for the more long-term solution
Yeah.
to this problem statement.
Yeah.
Obviously, whatever is the long-term solutions you take, whatever the in short term you build the middleware, it should stay,
Yeah.
because in 30 years there will be maybe another need to migrate from your core. Yes,
Yeah.
you already kind of this middleware. You kind of do this backend migration less visible for your end clients
Yeah.
for their experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. And one more point I want to touch base on. So you kept talking about aligning business with the tech. Otherwise, it does not execute well.
Exactly.
Uh, But who typically in the banking world should be leading that change? So, from a digital transformation perspective, should that now be led by, let's say, a CIO team, or should it be chief digital officer, or have you also been seeing a lot of business teams now leading that change? Where should that be led from?
It varies from bank to bank,
Yeah.
but one interesting thing has happened a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and it was Gen AI.
Yeah.
Reason like Gen AI, okay, it's a new technology, new type of AI models, but in my opinion, it's not about new technology. It's about the fact with Gen AI, the ordinary people, business stakeholders, they're able to build themselves
Mm-hmm.
some basic AI models, AI
Yeah.
assistants, which will help them to solve some tasks.
Yeah.
And this is where the click really happened. Because now the business stakeholders got more connected to the capabilities which technology, AI, for example, is in this case particularly is bringing to them.
Mm.
And this is what has, as the people realized, the just ordinary stakeholders, that actually AI is not that scary, technology is not that scary,
Mm-hmm.
they started stepping up into leading the transformations.
Yeah.
Uh, so the big trend which I do observe today is that the business stakeholders, they take the ownership of those transformations.
Okay.
And this wasn't happening 5 years ago.
I totally agree. So that's also what we have been observing. More and more business folks have come forward, but they
Exactly.
have realized the need that they have to be digital if they want to succeed. So a purely offline mode typically does not work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with these new technologies, they can see that actually with Gen AI,
Yeah.
those technologies can be leveraged by the business
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
They're not that complicated.
Yeah. That's true. But good for bringing in AI to the podcast. Otherwise, in 2025, if we don't talk about AI, the podcast would not have been complete. Uh, but anyway, we want to switch to AI now. So, on AI front, what are some of the areas where you are seeing that banks are open to experimenting on the AI as a technology, especially on Gen AI, let's say, because AI in several shapes and forms has existed in the last 5, 7 years at least. And what are some of the areas where they are completely restrictive, where there is a clear no that no, we don't want to touch AI in this particular area?
Uh, First of all, thank you for bringing the AI
Yeah.
question, because I would say from my experience, 95% of the discussions which we have with clients these days, they touch AI.
Yeah.
And Google is seen as the leader in this space. And we often see that the banks, they do come to Google for AI to solve their business problems.
Mm-hmm.
Often, and in Gen AI, for example, we often see that maybe the banks start experimenting with some non-compliant solutions
Yeah.
on the market, and then they realize, okay, we want to move it into the production. They start looking what are the Gen AI platforms
Yeah.
exist on the market, and they
Yeah.
come to Vertex AI, which is has all the guardrails. Google indemnify from all whatever IP
Mm-hmm.
violations. Very transparent on how security handles, etc., etc. So they all so in my view, 80% of the banks in every single market, at least in this part of the world, they are already with Google Cloud on putting those GenAI use cases into the production.
Okay.
Then a couple of months ago, we as a Google, we went to an independent company and asked, okay, can you please go to different our clients in FSI space and ask them how those clients are progressing on their GenAI journey?
Mm-hmm.
And results were quite interesting.
Okay.
26% of respondents said that they have GenAI use cases in production for more than 1 year.
Okay.
32 replied that they have GenAI use cases in production for less than 1 year.
Mm.
And 19% replied that they are going to have those use cases in production within a month or two. So pretty much 80+% of all the financial institutions, and not only in this part of the world, but overall globally, they already have GenAI use cases in production or within a couple of months.
That's a surprising fact for me even.
Yes.
So
And
yeah.
but more surprisingly
Mm-hmm.
was the second part of this answers, because we also ask, okay, for those banks who, and FSIs overall,
Yeah.
who have those GenAI use cases in production, do they have ROI? Do they observe ROI?
Yeah.
And 30% of them, of the those who have GenAI in production, they said that they already observe positive ROI.
Oh, is it?
Then we asked, okay, that's interesting, but can we check how long did it take those financial institutions to put GenAI into the production?
Yeah.
And guess what? 78% of them replied that it took them less than 6 months to put GenAI use cases in production.
Very nice.
Then the question, how come that it's moving so fast?
Yeah.
Why it didn't happen with traditional AI, where you
Correct.
had to do all the Python coding? And one of the reasons is because GenAI is literally democratized AI.
Mm-hmm.
The business stakeholders are on board in majority of the cases from day one.
Yeah, that's a great point because they're consuming it firsthand. They're trying it out firsthand. Otherwise, it was always with the developers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So having GenAI by the banks, it's already norm.
Yeah.
And having positive ROI
Hmm.
from GenAI,
Hmm.
it's a norm.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's already well-developed guardrails
Yeah.
how to make sure those GenAI models stay compliant.
Yeah.
And regulators, most of the regulators, they are more than happy to help the banks in a compliant manner to guide the banks on how to adopt those GenAI use cases. Depending, obviously, different regulators approach slightly different. There are variations in this, but it's becoming a mainstream.
So great, Maxim. Thank you so much for bringing that in. But when I talk about AI, the first concern that we always hear from the banks, and I'll tell you one of the examples. So we in Refo we do use a co-pilot, which developers can use to create banking decisions on the fly. So it assists them do that. When we showcased that to one of the bank CIO, their next question was, okay, looks great, but do you have a switch to turn it off as well? Because currently we are doing some kind of an AI policy for the bank that is yet not done. Once we have completed that AI policy, post that maybe we'll switch it on again. So from a compliance perspective, what are the concerns that you hear? And as a bank CIO, what are some of the things that I need to keep in mind so that this Gen AI, I am actually using a compliant version of Gen AI and I'm not just experimenting something where I would be in trouble later?
Thanks for bringing this question. I'm not aware about compliance of the solution which you mentioned. I can speak only about solutions which Google Cloud provide,
Sure.
and for those solutions, I can assure you about being the Google is very well known for providing very transparent explanation how the GenAI, Gemini models on Vertex AI operate.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, probably my advice to you in this situation, please ask the CIO to ping me,
Mm-hmm.
and I will be able to help him or her
Mm-hmm.
to quickly navigate the compliance discussions
Mm-hmm.
so that they can enjoy GenAI capabilities
Mm-hmm.
with Google Cloud on your great product.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean that you go ahead with a reputed cloud provider like Google Cloud and use their version of GenAI, which is Gemini, then by default you are compliant? As a bank CIO, how do I make sure that I'm always GenAI compliant when I'm using that in the bank?
So we have a platform which is called Vertex AI.
Mm-hmm.
This is where all our and third-party GenAI models are hosted. We call it a model garden.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, we have various guardrails which are embedded into the platform. For instance, we indemnify you as a bank from whatever intellectual property rights violations,
Okay.
claims may come against you.
Understood.
We provide you with different types of the grounding
Mm-hmm.
so that you can mitigate whatever hallucinations
Yeah.
which any GenAI model is exposed to.
Understood.
We also provide you through Gemini his ability to rely on Google search
Okay.
so that your grounding becomes justified. You can see where exactly this information was coming from, for example. And we are working obviously very closely with all the regulators. As I mentioned, by far majority of the banks have adopted this solution, and we have been hand-holding them in this journey.
Yeah.
What we will do when you as a CIO of the bank come to us, we'll be able to help you very easily and quickly to understand what the best practice is for the guardrails so that it is compliant with regulations. We provide you all the transparency on how it works and how best to implement it so that you can have it turned on and your business to enjoy the impact from the GenAI.
Understood.
So all those best practices, they are incorporated in our Vertex AI platform. That would be my answer to your question. And in a more compliant way, because I obviously, if the CIO doesn't follow the advice and does something wrong,
Yeah.
then
So there is limited, of course, there is limited control that you have on what eventually the bank is doing. But as a Gen AI provider, their number of guardrails is what you're mentioning are
Exactly.
already baked in to the
Exactly.
product.
Exactly.
Understood. And what about democratization of this technology? Do you really think it is actually being democratized enough? And the reason I'm asking this is I'm just trying to understand the overall impact on competitive advantage that this technology would provide to, let's say, a large bank versus a small bank. So today, large bank and small banks would have a lot of difference in terms of what are the growth rates, what are the profit margins, etc. What kind of capabilities that each of one would actually have. Would this Gen AI technology create that gap even wider? Because let's say the large banks would know how to quickly leverage it in a better manner, or they would have more resources to access it. So that competitive advantage gap would become even wider. Or do you think it is available throughout the stack or throughout the size of the banks in a very linear or a uniform fashion that everybody would be able to leverage the benefits equally?
With Gen AI technology coming in, the gap will increase, but not between small and big financial institutions.
Okay.
But let me bring some slide to you.
Sure.
As you can see here, the banks who has been embracing the technology
Yeah.
for the digital leaders,
Yeah.
they have been outperforming those financial institutions who were laggards, who were still thinking whether they need to adopt cloud, AI, etc. And you can also see here that pretty much every analyst predict that this trend will continue. Therefore, the gap will increase, but it's not between the big and small players.
Yeah.
It's the gap between the digital leaders who dictate higher margins, better customer experience, and the laggards who will eventually be falling behind. For
Okay.
my call to action for those banks who haven't yet started adopting cloud and AI
Yeah.
for solving the business problems, please accelerate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can be out of the market.
Yeah, understood. So what I get is it's not about the size, but it's more about that mindset. Whether you're a
Exactly.
leader or a laggard in that particular industry,
Exactly.
that would further widen the gap for sure.
Exactly.
Understood. And so I want to leverage on your experience across the JAPAC market. So you work across Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, India, and Australia, right? So between these markets, what are some of the trends that you're seeing? How are these markets different in terms of technology adoption or anything else that you would want to highlight? How banks behave differently in terms of, let's say, technology adoption, cloud adoption, AI adoption across these geographies today?
This market, Asia Pacific and Japan, is probably the most diverse across all the regions which we have in Google Cloud.
Understood.
Some of the countries they have been, for whatever reasons, earlier adopters of the cloud, and they ended in a situation when they wanted to be adopters of the cloud and ended up 15 years ago, 10 years ago, going for the cloud for infrastructure. And they realized that maybe there were not much benefits from just lift and shift 30-year-old systems. Now they need to build the case with the management that they need to pull back and to go for the cloud for value. This happens in those markets who have been first adopters of the cloud.
Yeah.
It's fine. There are markets who were slower in adopting the cloud. As a result, they're able to leapfrog the situation in which earlier adopters found themselves,
Okay.
and they can go immediately from on-prem to the cloud for value.
Yeah.
And that's what we are seeing in a number of the markets as well.
Understood.
And in some of the markets, it is the whole dynamics change, the massive growth in the markets like India, which we are experiencing today for the banking industry, which actually dictates for the banks that you cannot run anymore on-prem. You need to run on the cloud because the scale here in India is just mind-blowing, and it
Yeah.
is only increasing.
Yeah.
And as the more and more people start embracing the financial services, more complicated financial services, it's naturally not possible anymore to run your business on legacy stacks.
Yeah.
And just the whole business growth forces you to adopt the new technology.
Yeah.
Therefore, three trends. The first one, in some of the markets, it's about moving from cloud for infra to cloud for value. In some of the markets, it's how to leapfrog and move from on-prem to immediately to the cloud for value. And in some of the markets like India, it's just the nature of the business demands that you need to adopt the best-in-class solutions. And it doesn't matter whether you try cloud on-prem, or cloud on for infra on-prem. It's just you have to the market is pushing you to do so.
Yeah, understood. And how do you see JPAC market different from America and European Union? Any observations on that?
I personally believe that Asia Pacific and Japan market is the one where a lot of innovations originate for multiple reasons. It's a market where we have a lot of emerging economies, where a lot of economic growth is happening. And it's the market where the new ideas have to bubble up because of that. And this growth, economic growth, is actually translating to a lot of the new technological ideas, the completely new solutions to business problems to come up. And in my opinion, Asia Pacific and Japan, this is the area where the fastest adoption of new technologies is coming. This is where the innovations are happening at an accelerated space, which you scale and speed, which you cannot find in any other part of the world.
Understood.
This is why I'm here.
Yeah. All right. So last question for the day for you. If you have to make, let's say, one transformative change, or sorry, if you have to predict one transformative change that would happen in the banking world in next 1 decade, what do you think that's going to be? And you can't say cloud.
The line between the bank and technology will disappear.
Yeah.
The banks will become invisible. As we embrace different applications, the banks will be integrated into different pieces of our life journeys in an invisible way, leveraging technology.
Got it. So with that, Maxim, I think we had a great discussion with you today. It was very exciting for me to learn about so many things, and I'm sure for the banking world, whether it is people coming from the technology team or people coming from the business team, they would equally learn a lot, I believe, from this discussion. But thank you so much for taking out time and coming here today and doing this with us. We hope to bring you again for further discussions in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Nitin, a lot for having me here and for the opportunity to share some insights and for amazing discussion today. And I will be glad to continue our partnership and work together.
Thank you, Maxim.
Thank you.